Okay, so Danielle, you have the floor. So take it away.
Before Danielle takes the floor, I would just like to say that the hobby of tabletop RPGs was omitted from the bio, and I think it is important to mention that as well.
Es
Tabletop RPGs
importante
are awesome.
mencionar.
All right, go to town, Danielle. Sorry.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. You can see it, right?
Faz o que você preferir.
Yeah, we see you.
All right. I think we're getting some audio leaking in from other channels.
Some colleagues were accidentally unmuted, but we're working on that, and the colleagues are being quick on the take as well.
That's what I meant. Okay. All right. So, okay. Today I'm going to talk about some updates on the crypto economy. I am kind of assuming that most of you here are at least a little bit familiar with the basics of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but if not, that's fine because I'm going to go over some of the foundations too. Just a little bit about me again, even though I was very brilliantly introduced by Bakshi. I'm an interpreter, translator, Brazilian and Canadian. I've studied a whole bunch of disparate things in my life. I'm certified and a member of many different associations and a huge nerd. I think it needs to be repeated. All right, so here's our program for today. Like I said, the foundations. Then we'll look at wallets, hardware and software. Then we'll actually begin with the updates part, which is the integration between the traditional banking and the crypto economy, as well as stablecoins and CBDCs. Then we'll go into smart contracts and then Web3 stuff, such as NFTs, decentralized apps, and DeFi, among others. All right, so the very basic foundation, and this is a sentence that is very complex, but everyone needs to understand, is that Bitcoin is a cryptographic, decentralized, trustless ledger and a fungible digital currency. That's a lot to digest, so let's look at them one at a time. Cryptographic refers specifically to something called a hash function, which is a math formula that essentially you take an input, you apply the math formula called the hash function, and it gives you output that is always the exact same size regardless of the input. It's a type of encryption, but it's a specific one. So you can see that A, B, and C over here, all their outputs are all different from one another, but they're all the same length. Now, you may be wondering about the length and concerned with security, but don't worry, because Bitcoin uses an algorithm called SHA-256 or 256-bit encryption, which basically means that there are this is one number. This is the huge number of different possibilities in the SHA-256 algorithm. That's 10 to the 77 possible values, which comes out to, all right, you're all here to practice interpreting, right? So I'm going to read out this number. Get ready. It's 115 quator vigintillion. Of course, I'm just kidding. I could not ever. But it's very interesting. If you look at this, you'll learn a lot about large numbers. It's just insane the amount of possibilities are. And to give you some context, there are 10 to the 80 atoms in the known universe. So that means that with today's technology, reversing a Bitcoin address would take something like 23 million years. So it's very safe. It's much safer than anything else that exists on the planet today. Okay, so after the hash function, we have this other aspect called asymmetric encryption. And basically what this means is you have your private key here on the left, you have your public key in the middle, and then you have the crypto address, which is also public. Basically, the private key is your password that you will use to decrypt or encrypt the public key, and that gives you the crypto address. So if you look here at this very beautiful graph, you can see that if you have a private key and a public key, then you can get an address. And if you have an address but don't have the private key and do have the public key, then you can't do anything with only that. In order to control the wallet, the funds, you need all three: the address, the private key, and the public key. I'm not going to go into, the actual details of how it works, but this is essentially how it works. You need these three elements, and this one is derived from these two. All right. Next, we have decentralization. And this essentially just means that the Bitcoin network, it's a network of different computers all running the same program all around the world. And every value is always identical everywhere. There's no lag time between them. The network is created in such a way that no matter what computer you're looking at, everything is always going to be exactly the same. And that's very important. Next is something called trustlessness. Trustless means the opposite of what you're thinking. It means you can trust it, because it means you don't need to trust it. If you compare it here on the right with fiat, fiat comes from Latin, from the word fiat, which means make it so. And essentially, fiat means that someone you already trust or fear tells you this thing is trustworthy. So that can come from, let's say, the King of England, the Fed, the Brazilian central bank, the central bank of any other country. And if you trust that institution or that person, then you need to trust whatever they're telling you is trustworthy. But if you go back here on the left, trustless means that you can inspect the code yourself because it's open source, and you can see for yourself what it does. Or maybe you're not very good with computers. That's fine. If you can find someone who is, and someone that you trust, then you trust them, but you choose to trust them. You're not being required to trust them. So essentially, decentralization and open source means that if you trust the protocol, then you don't need to trust a stranger, unlike with fiat, where you do need to trust many different strangers. All right, next is the ledger. Now, Bitcoin is often seen as a currency, but more specifically, it's actually a ledger. It's an accounting register. It has a full record of the entire previous block and consequently all of the other previous blocks, all the way to the very beginning. This is publicly available information for anyone who can look at it, who knows how to look at it. And that means that anyone can audit the entire blockchain all the way to the beginning. It's also important to note that a new block can only be added if it's mathematically valid. And that's where we get the term mining. Mining just refers to the fact that when you want to add a new block to the blockchain, you basically need to solve a very complex equation. And whoever resolves that equation first, everyone in the world who's a miner competes to solve it first, and whoever solves it first earns, I don't know how many Bitcoin. That's how the system works. And thirdly, once a new block has been added and confirmed and included into the subsequent blocks, it is absolutely immutable. It can never, ever, ever, ever be changed at all for any reason. So these three components make the blockchain a very secure ledger. And just to give you a visual of what I mean before, here you see that each subsequent block includes the previous block inside it. The Merkle root is basically the hash function. And just to illustrate. All right, next we have fungibility. Bitcoin is a fungible currency, which means that if you have one Bitcoin and then someone gives you one more Bitcoin, then you have two Bitcoin, obviously. But if you want to sell half of a Bitcoin, it doesn't matter where each piece came from, because every unit is the same as every other unit. Now, if you compare that with gold, gold is also fungible, but it's a physical currency. So let's say you have a 1 kilogram bar of gold, and someone gives you another 1 kilogram bar of gold. you do not magically have 1 2-kilogram bar of gold. No, you have 2 1-kilogram bars. So if you want to sell 500 grams of gold, you would need to choose what bar to break in two. This means that the gold at this point is not funged, which is not a real word, but totally should be. Now, if instead you melt down your gold, then you can forge it into a 1 2-kilogram bar. That means that gold is fungible. It can be melted, again from Latin. Now, if you compare that, these two, which are fungible, if you compare that here with non-fungible at the bottom, non-fungible means everything that is different from other units. So expensive art, jewelry, real estate, collectibles, and NFTs, as we'll see later on. And lastly, it is a digital currency. So that means that with any other currency, you can buy it, sell it, earn it, spend it, save it, invest it, give it away, whatever. It's a currency. All right, so there we have it. Bitcoin is a cryptographic, decentralized, trustless ledger and fungible digital currency. All right, so now let's move into some of the new updates. But first, we need to look at where we store Bitcoins. Back in the old days of the Wild West, quando tudo aqui era mato, we only had software wallets. And this is basically what they look like. You can have them on your phone, on your computer, whatever. But actually, the safest way to store your Bitcoin is in a hardware wallet. And here we have 3 or 4 different examples of hardware wallets. I think the most interesting one is here on the right. This string of this code and these words, these are actually a cryptographic password that stores your entire public and private keys. This means that if you lose this device here, or anything, all you need in the world is this. With this card, you can have access to your Bitcoin wallet. And here are some other ones. In practice, though, most of the time, your wallet is going to be this thing, or something like it, where you basically press a button to make a payment, or read out a code and show someone a QR code, and they'll scan it in to give you money. All right, now into integration. There are 2 different types, and these are some very interesting new developments. First, we have crypto into banking. There are many different card processors that all have crypto debit cards now. We've got MasterCard, Visa, Amex, Elo, lots of other ones around the world. And basically, this is a prepaid card, like a debit card. You will take cryptocurrencies, you deposit them into a specific account, and then that account is used whenever you want to spend money. So you can go to any store. The store doesn't need to, quote unquote, accept crypto. Any store that accepts one of these 4 processors will accept your Bitcoin. So it's a very easy way to spend crypto. I'm saying Bitcoin, but there are actually many different currencies, right? What I do mean is crypto. And we've also got integration the other way around, from the traditional banking world into the world of crypto. So here's a very interesting new development with MasterCard. This is actually brand spanking new. This is published and went live in May 2024. So it's less than a month old. And basically what it does is, well, first of all, the trust. Everyone trusts MasterCard. So if you trust MasterCard, then MasterCard will trust you once you give them the right credentials. And they basically create an alias for your wallet. So here's a breakdown of how it works. Sorry, this is a little complex, but I couldn't find a better way to explain it. Traditionally, here on the top, let's say this is your wallet address, and you want to send it in blue, and you want to send it to this tan one. They look similar, right? But they're different. So usually, to make the transfer, you would go through the Bitcoin protocol. Now, with MasterCard, you will enter in your actual email address or any other code, like a PIX code, or similar to, not exactly, but similar to a PIX code. And then MasterCard will convert that securely into your wallet code. Then the funds get transferred. And then MasterCard again converts that into the recipient's email address. So in practice, this means you won't need to know this stuff. You just need your address and the destination address and vice versa, and you can transfer money that way. This is going to be really revolutionary in how the process works. Actually, speaking of revolutionary, I completely forgot to ask the poll questions. Actually, Daniel, can you help me with the poll? I should have done this in the very beginning. So just to get this translated, on a scale of 0 to 5, how familiar are you with crypto as a whole? 0 meaning absolutely nothing, and 5 meaning, you're very familiar with it. Let me just get some water while you guys answer.
I have all three questions at once, so if you want to go through all of them,
Oh,
that'll
that's
be
right.
easier.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, you're right. You're right. So secondly, while you answer that, the question is, do you own any crypto? And thirdly, regardless of whether you understand it or whether you earn anything, how significant do you think crypto is overall?
Answers still coming in. I'm not sure you can see as a co-host the results of the poll. Can you see?
Yeah, I do.
Ah, okay, perfect.
Very interesting. Very heterogeneous group we've got here. Usually when I ask this question, everyone's like 0. I don't know anything about it. I'm very happy to see that we've got lots of people who are higher than 0.
I am also curious as to whether there has been some change in this after these past first months of the year, where work has been down for a lot of people. If that has prompted anybody to look into crypto.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
Okay, I think we got about
right,
20 responses. That should be
Yeah.
a good representation of the group.
Yes, perfect. All right. Do these get saved or should I take a screenshot?
They're supposed to get saved, but feel free to screenshot it. It's fine.
Okay. Hang on. Let me just do that then. Oh, someone just answered. All right. I'm going to close the poll. So if you're thinking about an answer, now is your chance. All right. And here's the results for those of you who are curious. It's too bad that that Zoom doesn't share the results, because then the hosts are always like talking about the results, and all the participants are just wondering, what the hell are they talking about?
I actually just shared the results. They can see it. They can see it now.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to close the polls window. Hang on, let me take a new screenshot first. All right. Okay. So, continuing on the topic of integration, there's another type of integration called stablecoins and also CBDCs, which are even newer. Stablecoins are cryptocurrencies whose value is pegged to an external reference, for instance, the dollar, the euro, or commodities such as gold, and they are regulated by a company or a consortium of companies. So some examples are, there's one called a USD coin, which is organized, it's controlled by a company called Coinbase Inc. And what they do is every time the price of the US dollar goes up or down, they alter the price of USD coin. And conversely, the price of USD coin never changes. So it's always a fixed cost to buy it, unlike other current cryptocurrencies that are usually floating. And another example is Tether Gold, which is always the exact price of 1 troy ounce of 0.99 purity gold sold, I think, in Canada or the UK. I don't remember exactly where, but it's controlled by a company called Tether Operations Limited. And on the same side of that coin, we've got CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies. They're exactly the same, except they're created and regulated by a central bank and not a private business. So some examples include the digital real X, called Drex for some reason. I wish they'd